another guest, Matthew Grambow, the city grant writer. Thank you very much for attending. Talking about the process of how the city finds funding for projects.
We need to get him out of here quickly. Who's expecting to be here?
Oh, sure.
Oh, really?
You're expecting a baby today?
Any moment now, yeah.
No. That's congratulations.
Another day, brother.
Yes, a continental version.
Oh, I won't, I promise.
Well, it's exciting.
Got his phone to be in here, and I said he's got his priorities.
No, keep the phone on.
Hello, my name is Matthew Grambow. I'm one of the city's grant writers in the city manager's office. I've been here for approximately 2 years, and my responsibilities include developing grant proposals for all city departments, managing emergency funding reimbursements through the FEMA Public Assistance Program, and providing assistance to department staff on grant reporting and grant compliance. The other grant writer at the city is Ms. Candace Mosley, and she works primarily with the Fort Myers Police Department. It's my pleasure to be here today and to speak with you about the process upon which we seek competitive grant funding. So the city utilizes a 6-step approach to seeking and obtaining grant funds. We identify grant opportunities. We match the project requirements, the city project requirements, with the grant requirements from the funding agency. We have a go, no-go decision point, which leads to the development of a grant application, the submission and approval of the grant application, and then a review of the results and the implementation of the grant-funded program. So to identify opportunities for competitive funding, we do one of 2 channels within the city. We either take a project to opportunity channel, where I'm directed by the city manager, department directors, or city staff to find funding opportunities to fund specific city projects. These are for projects that are mostly developed, have a relatively established budget, and a timeline upon which funding is needed to complete the project. There's also an opportunity to project channel, where I conduct grant research for federal, state, local, and foundation or nonprofit organization grants, and I present that information to city staff and leadership. Once a grant opportunity is identified, we attempt to match project requirements with the requirements of the grant. That involves reviewing the grant program's purpose, goals, and eligible costs to the purpose, goals, and costs of the city project. And this is a really critical step in our process of evaluating those grant opportunities, because we want to fund projects that are driven by the city and not implement projects that are solely driven by the funding agency's requirements. After that review, there's a no-go decision point for the development of a grant application. We review the eligibility of the city for the specific opportunity, looking at any population or geographic area eligibility requirements. We review our predicted competitiveness for the grant program. We also look at any potential supplanting or replacing of budgeted funds. Many federal grants have a requirement to not replace any budgeted city money with money that is coming from the grant. So we want to be in compliance with that regulation. We also look at the ability of the city to secure matching funds, not only to the minimum match requirement for the grant program, but also any additional matching funds that can increase the competitiveness of the application itself. We also look at the performance timeline after receiving funding to ensure that we can complete the grant-funded project within the required time frame. And of course, we look at the application deadline to ensure that we can meet the application deadline and submit an application that is complete and will be very competitive. Once we are going forward with an application development process, I gather program information from city staff, typically have a point of contact in whatever the department is that's applying for the funding. I develop an application outline, create a grant project budget, and review the first draft of the application narrative with my point of contact and city staff to ensure that everything is accurate, that will be on the public record and submitted to the grant funding agency. Once that's reviewed and redrafted, I also gather attachments and supporting documentation, including letters of support, maps, pictures, environmental and historic preservation forms that are required with the application submission, and I finalize the application package. Once the application is complete, I submit the application for the City Council consent agenda. Upon receiving approval from the City Council, I submit the application to the funding agency, and within a couple weeks or months, I often receive requests for additional information, and I provide that to the funding agency upon request. In 3 to 9 months, depending on the grant opportunity and the funding agency, awards are announced, and we'll either accept the grant award or review further. And if we do not receive a grant award, I request what's known as the grant report card, which has the scoring breakdown of how the application scored against other projects. I also look at, over time, which projects have been funded out of the project and compare our proposed project to the awarded projects and also the scoring. So the idea is to continuously improve if we're not awarded grant funds in a certain opportunity. So that's a rough overview of the grant process and how we look for competitive funding. And at this time, I'd love to take any questions.
So some of the awards, I know Centennial Park was granted an award for some special playground and new playground equipment for people of all, kids of all abilities. That was a successful grant that we received. And what are give us an idea, some of the other, is it infrastructure, the streetscapes, what are some of the other projects you're targeting?
So we're targeting a vast majority of projects right now. It's a very busy time because of the American Recovery Program Act source of funding. I'm sure you've been hearing a lot about infrastructure funding in the news. And so we're working on a couple different projects. I'm working with the Public Works Department for 3 different applications for the Rebuild Florida General Infrastructure Program, which is due mid-September. And was meeting with the city manager this morning to discuss next steps for applying for that funding. We're looking at projects that involve stormwater. We're looking at projects for some road improvements in different areas of the city, as well as applying for some funding for the Stars Complex renovation project there. We're also looking at a couple different specifically economic development opportunities through the American Recovery Program Act that I've been working very closely with Barbara on. They have 2 programs that are of particular interest. They have a tourism-focused economic development grant that is for improvements to city infrastructure and city services that are focused on rejuvenating industries such as tourism that were affected by the coronavirus pandemic. However, there's also a more open-ended opportunity through the Economic Development Administration's Economic Adjustment Assistance expansion. So that is an opportunity that has awards from $500,000 to $5 million, and it's very open-ended. You can use it for planning projects and all sorts of different infrastructure and other programming within the city that is really focused on economic development, but it's kind of a catch-all program for any way that a city can use it. It's supposed to be very flexible for cities to be able to utilize.
Excellent. I'd like to welcome Roy Kenix. Nice to see you. Do you have any comments on some of the things you'd like to see?
Sure.
I'm happy to know that you're there. I'll say I didn't know you were there, actually. Most of the people here would know that one of my pet proposals is that we have an Office of Grantsmanship. So evidently we do have an Office of Grantsmanship. I think that's great. I do think that some models that I've seen in some other places where I've lived, there may be, I don't want to say more robust initiatives, but money makes a difference. How much you commit to the initiative is gonna, sort of what you put in may have some relationship to what you get out. I'm thinking now that I know the city of Atlanta, for example, where I lived for a number of years, they had a Office of Grantsmanship, and they had a guy who spent most of his time in Washington looking for money. In fact, he had a residence there. So that kind of helped him to get out front and to do more intensive lobbying, so to speak, for money for the city. So he was, the money brought in the city paid a lot of the money that went to Jackson Hartsfield Airport came out of Washington. And this guy was on front end of what was going on. So I still argue again, now, especially with the large sums of monies that don't come around every day, that are in the infrastructure bill, that's being debated now. That's a large pot of money for affordable housing, for economic development, for a variety of things that are needed by underserved communities in the city, inner city neighborhoods. So I would still argue for more funding, meaning more money is being available to plow into grantsmanship. I'm a firm believer, and one thing is that the grantsmanship thing is sometimes, I think you stated some of that, the structure you went through is, I think that's fairly standard. That's very good, universal almost. But I'm thinking that there are things oftentimes that are taking place in other cities that you only know about if you have some accesses to those cities in terms of how they use grant monies. I'll just make another couple comments and I'll shut up. I learned from what some people do in Kansas City that you could use EDA money, grant monies, for anything for a community development project that was underneath the ground. They didn't go above the ground for their commitment. So if you need the foundational work, and the site prep, EDA money could be used for that. Okay, now, also learned that the Department of Health and Human Services had a little bitty office there, staffed by about 5 people, but they made grants of up to $800,000 for shopping centers. I got one of those grants, that's how I knew it was there. But I'm saying how I learned about this, again, was from Kansas City. Some folks in there had used it. So I don't know how you do outreach. I think you almost have to be able to strategically identify places that seem to be doing very well. And that's a job for somebody I know there's no one answer to this, and I'm a little dogmatic about this because I've done it and I've seen it done. So I'm just making a suggestion that, the city invest, the economic development, the mayor's committee on diversity and unity, that's one of its proposals. We invest more money in grantsmanship. I think that is, I think it's one in terms of money. Now, the last thing I'm gonna say, I'll finish. Somehow the money that you raise.
Already, I just want to make sure for the record.
Yeah, I'm not concerned.
These are all good comments.
Okay, just one more comment. And that is that the community groups who don't have staff for research and development, somehow you have to have a mechanism that will also filter some of the money out that you find to these community groups, not all just for the city as a governmental entity to use and develop, but also groups that are out here looking for money all the time. How you get, I know what mechanism you have for sharing with these groups what you're doing and for asking them about their needs. It's a two-way street, you see what I'm saying? Okay.
Thank you, Roy.
And I can comment on that real quick if you don't mind.
Please.
One thing, just as a side note, and again, it's, for the record, it's Barbara Carter, the Business and Economic Development Administrator. When we talk about it, we're thinking, and he's exactly right about, we're gonna need support, and you're right about there's support that we need from the community that needs to happen. And that outreach, just as an example, is, I'm at a meeting yesterday and I'm grabbing the card for the Southwest Florida District Directors, who represents the Senator, Rick Scott. And I'm having a conversation about we're gonna be looking at some grant opportunities, and we'd like your support for what we're gonna do. And so that outreach is vital, and I appreciate that. And then you, as a group, because you're aware of what we're trying to do, we look to you for your areas to also share, what's happening. But I think one of my strong strengths, and the thing that I enjoy the most, is bridging between two people. When I get a chance to talk to someone and I understand what their need is, and I talk to someone else, I like to do the bridge between the two. And I think I think that's the joy that we have in doing this work is that we get an opportunity and we've really started, don't you feel like, as a city, when Christine had us all get together and we're each from the different departments, we're talking about what are some of the needs. We're really moving in that direction, Roy. I feel like we're all on board, we're all listening to what other departments need, and we're thinking about what else. But community support is so important.
Just to add on to that, when the Billy's Creek Restoration Grant was approved, the city manager reached out to the community, and I wrote a very long letter to the governor, and we feel like it helps, and that we're engaged, and we got the grant, and I'm sure everyone who wrote letters, the governor read and saw how important ecotourism, the water quality, and all the issues around that.
And yesterday when, Matt, he's working on these grants, and so we had a conversation with I had a conversation with our lobbyists. So we have people who lobby for us on our behalf. And we talked about like what are the things that are gonna make us more attractive to the Economic Development Administration. What do we need to make sure is included in here? And I just wanted to share this one slide, Kristen, if you can see it, that you're right, we're planning with the community, not for the community. So our having good relationships with you and building these purposeful relationships, strengthening our partnerships, it's all purposeful action, and it is truly like at our core what we want to see happen within the city of Fort Myers. And sometimes people will say they have a little bit of distrust in working with the city, and that's a barrier that we have to overcome. And it's honest. People are very honest about maybe their past experiences. But our goal truly is just to model the strength of the community and to build on what we've already accomplished and find some ways to empower action that fits what the community wants. And I see that as truly our goal. So
thank you,
for your
Barbara.
comments.
And thank you, Matthew. If there are any comments, please.
With all the different possibilities of money, the money that is coming available from the virus and if the infrastructure bill passes, do we have shovel-ready projects? Because they're usually the ones they ask for to go first, is the shovel-ready projects.
So when they talk,
Can we let Matthew address, please?
No problem. Yes, there are, and some of the money that's coming through has up to like a 12-year performance period.
Well, yeah, but the shovel-ready projects tend to get these things first.
Sure.
That's the way it works.
Yeah, there's a what?
Because the politicians want to get reelected, so they want the shovel.
Progress right away within the cycle. Yeah, there's a wide variety of projects that are available that I've been involved in and learned about with producing some of these grant applications. Some that are ready immediately and the next year. Yeah.
Excellent.
So there's a variety.
Lee?
Yes, I have a question. I just looking at that slide there. That's a very good plan to work, an initiative, better engage community, different organizations, and so forth. But what I want to know for sure is clear in my mind. If there's an organization that has a direct relationship with the city, contractual, and they wanted to do something, are you allowed to work with that group to facilitate a grant?
Yeah.
Service that.
There's a lot of different ways to apply with who's the lead applicant for some of the grant opportunities.
Okay. You'll be hearing from us, brother. You ain't got to say nothing else.
Ken?
Let me piggyback what he just, Lee's question.
No, you got to use your time.
Ken, did you have any comments?
I do.
Thank you.
Let me have some of his time.
Make it quick.
No, go ahead.
I got dibs on a Cohiba, by the way. I'll expect it at the next meeting. Pre-congratulations.
Oh, thank you.
As I understand that municipalities and the state funds are awarded from the Treasury Department based on unemployment. And is that affecting grants as well? Because with the enormity of unemployment right now, I'm wondering if that is more favorable for grants and for federal funds.
So for the large batch of money that's going to the municipalities and the other state and local governments, that was based on population. So that's where the city received its allotment, was based on population. There's all sorts of unemployment factors in other grant opportunities, through EDA and Department of Commerce and Department of Treasury. where sometimes the project that you're proposing needs to serve an area that has a certain unemployment level. But we try to craft our projects to, when I apply for grants, I'm always looking at the areas that are going to be most benefited based on unemployment in the census tract where the project will be located.
So Dunbar or another impoverished area with perhaps greater unemployment would not necessarily be affected favorably with grants and loans.
It would be more competitive if a project that was proposed in the grant application primarily served a lower moderate income community. When they're evaluating the grant applications, it's usually on a point scale, usually around 100, and usually there's a 10, 15, 20 point range based on the percentage of the project that serves high unemployment or lower moderate income area, as well as the like percentage of the areas that are of that category.
Well, my distinguished colleague, thank you, who's possesses an enormity of knowledge of wealth, brought up something kind of noteworthy where he wasn't aware that your office necessarily was in existence, and I think that that might be indicative of the need for the public, for builders, for contractors, for developers. They have a greater insight what they can take advantage of to get projects in the impoverished areas moving ahead. I don't know how we promote that. I don't know how we get it out there and in the
Be a press release or something, you know.
Sure, and you know, since Barbara's been here, she's been really coordinating with me to spread information like that into the community, and I'm really grateful for her assistance and her ability to kind of coordinate what I do in my office and with the applications and working on, you know, programming for different departments in the city and then connecting that to the public.
And we see how much hard work goes into these grants. We really appreciate it. Roy, brief, because we got to get Matthew.
Okay.
Oh, you're good. Okay. Well, again, good luck.
Thank
you
you
very much.
Yeah, thank you very much.
Is there anyone else for any final questions?
I just wanted to know, do you have business cards or?
I do. I can run and get one for you.
Oh, okay.
I'll bring out the
Awesome.
stack.
Well,
So-
thank you again.
Yeah, thank you very much. It's been a pleasure.
And congratulations, young man.
don't forget the Cohibas.
Also,